Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host, who's always thinking about the next big thing in sports digital, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. I'm Sean Callanan, and welcome to episode 389 of Sports Geek. This week, I catch up with Patrick Hooper. He's the Director of Digital Experiences at the San Jose Sharks. And yes, I am thinking about the next big thing in sports digital. And for me, it's plumbing. It's getting things to work together. I really love getting teams to work together, but then the geek side of me wants to get the tech working together, whether that's a social platform, your CRM, your app, getting those APIs and getting those pipes and that digital plumbing in place. It's super important to be able to get both the connected experience, the connected data, but then also getting your teams working well together. And I discussed that today with Patrick. You might be listening to this podcast on our website, sportsgeekhq.com, or you might be doing so on your favorite podcast platform, whether that be Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, or my favorite, Pocket Casts, which now accepts reviews. If you listen on Pocket Casts, I'd love a 5-star review. And I do love working with podcast listeners. If you find yourself nodding during these podcasts, during these chats, I think that's a sign that we should be working together. Please reach out, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com, or on socials at Sean Callanan at SportsGeek. Like I said, I love working with podcast listeners, and if you're thinking about when's the best time, it's always now. Please enjoy my chat with Patrick Hooper from the San Jose Sharks. Very happy to welcome Patrick Hooper. He's the Director of Digital Experiences Integrated Marketing at the San Jose Sharks. Patrick, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, hi, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem at all. I always start off the podcast asking people how they got their start in sports. What about yourself? How did you get your first break in the world of sports business?
Yeah. Everyone's got those fun history stories, and everyone seems to come about it through all walks of life and different angles. Mine was, sports has been a passion of mine my whole life. I transitioned from thinking one day I was going to be a professional athlete to one day thinking, hey, maybe I'll be like a sports journalist and writing in sports for a career. I went through undergrad school right around that time when maybe print journalism and online media was transitioning, and quickly discovered this space that was a hybrid of like marketing and content and online media, and dabbled a little bit of it at school at my university before I was able to graduate and eventually apply for internships, which is quite a traditional way for people to get their foot in the door, and was able to get a role with the San Francisco 49ers, which brought me out to California for my first time ever. It was a marketing internship with them for just training camp. But, as the story goes with those intern roles, you come in, show up on time, and work hard. They tend to find a way for those type of people to stick around. And that's kind of what I did. I toured around and did 3 or 4 different internships with the Niners, found some opportunities down the road at the San Jose Sharks, my current employer. And that's kind of how I was able to kind of move laterally across the board there. And eventually a full-time opportunity opened up in a digital marketing space, one that certainly evolved over the last decade plus, but that was my first real-time pro gig handed to me. And, I kind of took the keys and ran with it from there.
And so you've been at the Sharks over 12 years now. How has that, from that initial role, how has that role changed in both scope and what you were tackling?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's been fun. It's been a great journey because I feel like as I've matured in my career and, had my hands in different roles of the business and supporting it in different areas, so too have I seen how it's evolved across the social landscape. That first gig I had was really one that interested me to be the one publishing content on the social handles, me and another counterpart. And we were really given some direction on strategy and we're really interested to kind of run with it and grow with it. So a lot of fun memories from those early days, a lot of trial and exploration. And, over time, we found kind of our niche in the ways that it worked for us and worked for our fans and our customers. And over time, the digital space grew. I think at the time we were hired, there was maybe a staff of 2 people doing it, and over the years we were able to add resources, and it's been fantastic to see where there's now like a carved out full production team producing video content, photo content, graphic design, and on my side, on the digital side, we've been able to grow to have more content producers on the social space. We've added resources to support us across all of our digital experiences, whether it be the mobile app or the websites. It's really evolved and been certainly at times, especially recent times, a signature component of how we engage and communicate with our fans and customers. So it's been great that we've been able to add resources as we go.
And so one of the things I wanted to ask you, because you've got a pretty common trajectory of that early time of that early social. I remember talking to Dwayne Hankins, infamously tweeting as the Kings, and that banter and that early social when everyone, Twitter and banter was popping off to moving into content production, app development, and sort of that natural progression. And now your title, which I find is pretty unique, asking people what their title is of digital experiences and integrated marketing. What does that title mean? Because the bit that I was focusing on was that experiences piece. I don't see that in many titles. I know a lot of people are tackling it. What does the title mean, and why is it important for you at the Sharks?
Yeah, I think it's an exclamation point on what matters to us in our business. The experience of our fans and customers needs to be at the forefront, even if it's just reminders internally of how we want to put customers first, make sure that a lot of our decisions and strategy is rooted within customer-centric approaches. I think it also is inspiring to me, to be in this role and have that as part of my title, because I feel like there's a lot of journey and leeway for what that means in terms of my own career growth and opportunity going forward. So it kind of serves a multi-purpose. It's a name and it's a title, and I think the roles you do in the organization sometimes supersede the title, but it's important to have that in there, and maybe just again echoes where we as Shark Sports Entertainment want to make sure that, hey, it's not just deploying a social strategy or building a great app experience. It's a great mobile app. It's about how do these platforms and technologies work to provide the experience that we deem necessary for our fans and guests and customers. And
like you said, it sort of does give you that scope and leeway, not having to go, don't make me tap the sign that says my job title. It's like, hey, if we want to, improve the app experience or improve things, like it's in the title. Whereas sometimes, you hear people internally fighting that they want to improve something. It's sort of, if this is the mantra of the organization, it's something that you really want to be able to, keep doubling down on.
Yeah, totally. I think something that is kind of common as a plague across probably all business, but, my history is with sports, is this term of, internal silos and siloed departments. And we were, certainly victim to it, and it still isn't completely conquered internally. But, prior to the pandemic period, and then certainly accelerated by that, we fought really hard internally to try to break down those barriers and make sure that everybody had better scope and access and transparency across roles. And I think it allowed for people to start to again not stay in your lane so much, be a little bit more aware of what other people's objectives were and how they were contributing to the benefit of the whole organization. And it allowed for that kind of freedom and leeway to maybe get involved in a lot of different projects and tasks. And, just because I'm the director of digital experiences doesn't mean this is mine, right? It's just I'm the steward to help lead it for the organization. But many of my colleagues have stakeholdership within the platforms that I help manage, and I need to make sure that it's serving across the whole business. So that's kind of the philosophical perspective we try to have on it all. And again, I think I'm biased, but I think that's a great way that people should want to be in the roles. That way they don't feel really cut off from the rest of the organization.
Definitely. I mean, it leads into me talking about, a couple of your colleagues that have been on the podcast in Netta, looking after all things from a data and analytics point of view. And then, the passion of Stacey in that customer experience and bringing joy. And yeah, you're a big part of, delivering that. So how have you tried to, break down those silos, but realize the opportunities that come, working with colleagues like that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to sound like we've solved it all, but I think we've seen some success where it is trying to develop some strong processes internally that allow for great documented declaration of what you're trying to solve, and then good sharing and transparency of how you're trying to get there. It seems so easy to point out the faults of the past where you could see misalignment or even kind of some ways competitive nature when these goals and objectives weren't shared. So we do some things through the strategic planning phases and maybe even just person to person, like Stacy and I or Netta and I, where we're actually collectively and collaboratively writing down our objectives so that each of ours match each other and we can see we're working towards it. But I think it's just about how you want to make sure that the organization is fairly flat and has access to each other and knows kind of how to gain the knowledge they need to move fast and move at a confident pace. Netta in her world in the business intelligence side and the amount of data that flows through the organization is just such a monster to conquer. So there's always going to be next items on the agenda and priorities there. So it's fairly obvious where our digital platforms serve a pretty critical role there and how it can support that effort, or where her team can actually enable us to have some pretty good success in terms of the experiences we create. And Stacy's, I couldn't get on a big enough soapbox to profess like how having someone dedicated to customer experience within the organization is such a critical role to have, where she has, good knowledge of how things work and can be that perspective to complement any conversation. So, having really good people in the right roles, but then having good processes to allow for those people to collaborate is pretty key there. And you mentioned two good ones there.
I wanted to talk about one of the key pieces of the puzzle for you in solving that is the app and mobile, and how that has evolved, in your time, because social was doing a lot of that heavy lifting early on, and then it sort of went to that Oprah phase. You get an app, you get an app, you get an app. Everyone had to have an app, and then there's that aggregation of all the apps starting to be similar because the platforms are being provided. Where is it now for you in, what function do you want the Sharks app to do, overall?
Yeah. I've had a fun history with our mobile app. You asked kind of back when I got my career started in sports, never would have imagined I would have been this deeply entrenched in tech and producing a mobile app experience. But, now looking back on it, it feels so befitting on kind of where some of the crossover is. When we kind of first started on this, we're going to develop our own mobile app that's central to our business route. We made so with a lot of conviction that, we as the Sharks wanted to have autonomy in building an experience that was best fitting for our fans and customers. And we knew how to provide that. You've seen maybe other leagues or other teams kind of had some rolled up experiences where it's like league controlled or league owned. And we knew pretty strongly that, we knew our customers and our demographic best, and started out on that journey. And it's a challenge, right? Because you're trying to solve a lot of different needs in one experience. Just because you're a Sharks fan, or you may come to the SAP Center to enjoy entertainment, whether it be hockey or some other concert or show, there's a lot you're trying to solve for in this one experience. And, we had some early trials and tribulation where, you kind of like, push and pull over this. Is it a content app, or is it a utility app? What are you actually best trying to lean into? And at different periods, we've maybe had a heavier effort than other. But I think the one that's won out over time is that, like, first and foremost, it has to be something that provides some value to our fans or customers on a reliable basis. And we found that with like maybe just the strongholds of digital ticketing, now a pretty formidable digital wallet experience that allows people to have kind of full commerce throughout our venues. Those utility-based products seem to be pretty core for what we found to be kind of like the primary use case of the app and those people who were currently using it. And then we were able to come through and layer on content that I think is a little bit more befitting for someone who would be using that app and that experience. We advertise it and try to put it as a solution for all of our businesses here at Shark Sports Entertainment, which is, again, more than just the San Jose Sharks, but we have the SAP Center, which is the venue that we operate where the Sharks play, but also tons of concert and shows come through. And then we have the San Jose Barracuda, who are the American Hockey League affiliate of the Sharks. They play just down the road at TechCU Arena. So that's a very kind of comparable sports team and venue. And then we also have 3 Bay Area ice skating facilities all under the Sharks Ice umbrella. And so a lot of different customers and fans interacting with our businesses, and this app experience that we're still on a journey of really perfecting for all those different use cases is meant to be this portal to the relationship between our customers, our fans, and us as the business. And so trying to have those touch points is pretty key there. You look at maybe the primary use case, which is you're coming to a Sharks game at SAP Center. That's where we see the majority of people engage in the app. And we kind of build it as like, hey, can this be like essentially a remote control for your game day experience, right? Can you from sun up to sundown interact with this app to help improve your experience all the way, whether it is understanding about parking, getting in through digital ticketing, coming in and leveraging your Sharks 365 membership benefits with a digital wallet, while you're in bowl, interacting with the game day experience by participating in games on the video board, being able to check some of the stats that you're wanting to pair with the visuals that are in front of you. That's kind of that overarching philosophy that we have, and kind of guides us through that earlier debate of content and utility and how what's the right play there.
I think that utility piece, which on that early app development, wasn't there, and then obviously the quick adoption for a certain reason around digital ticketing helped give those apps the stickiness they needed. I mean, it also should be noted that you're in the heart of Silicon Valley, so there is a real high bar of the users there, because they're all beta users of everything that they've got. They're all got some tech bent. And so it must set the bar high for what is expected for people in San Jose.
Yeah, no doubt. We've received quite a bit of good, solid feedback, and it's a luxury as much as it is a pressure to be able to have kind of different types of audience who have experience around these applications and technologies, and their demand for it to have a pretty high experience. So that's we're happy with that challenge.
And is part of that challenge also, a lot of the times experience is talking about experience at the stadium, and you've spoken about it, how is it getting there, parking, getting in, but then also we were all, looking at what does the fan experience looks like outside the stadium, the person that's not going, and how do you talk to that audience? Is that something that you're, always working on and always tweaking, both from an app and then, from a social perspective, to be able to talk to those two audiences in stadium and out of stadium?
Yeah, 100%. You nailed it. Maybe a benefit of the way we are structured and the way we group everything under digital experiences is that I oversee, I collaborate with our content strategy with our SJ Sharks Productions group, and that content is most often distributed across our social channels, our web channels, and our app channels. So we're pretty deeply ingrained in figuring out workflows and what is the brand content strategy and the storytelling that we want to communicate across all these platforms. And, just from a resource perspective, as much as we can figure out how do we, if we're developing a really strong piece of content for social, how can we make it work in the right ways for the app and elsewhere? So deeply ingrained in all those conversations. But you're right on the mobile experience. The one that I think is clearly best positioned for us to understand who that customer is, who that user is, and how they want to interact with our brand and business. It's making sure that we're servicing, the diehard Sharks fan in Toronto or New Jersey, as much as our 365 members who are coming to the game to make sure that their experience is great. And how do we enable kind of both of those touch points so that one doesn't feel alienated or cut off? And that's where you get into a little bit, okay, clearly that Sharks fan abroad or, removed from the Bay Area without the ability to come to games needs to be able to, listen live to the game and follow on the action, participate in some of those, live digital engagement opportunities. Certainly content needs to be more accessible to them, and, starting to be able to turn the page on identifying who those fans and customers are and surfacing content that's more relevant to them and that they appreciate is part of the strategy.
And is part of it, and you would have sort of been in that transition of working in the social teams, and you talked about silos. Sometimes you even have those silos in digital where the social team just want the content to live on social because it's great for their KPIs and they want to drive it. And as your app and your platforms has matured and become more stable and easy to track and a better experience, you sort of start going, well, we just want to tease it on social. We want to drive people into our app, or we want to drive people onto our site. You would have had some robust discussions internally around those things. So as your products have matured and you've got a better base and a better experience, is that something you've, slow, and also the instability of certain platforms that we might, talk about that, we don't know what they are. Is that something that that strategy has changed from a, social first to, hey, driving back into our site, this is the best experience?
Yeah. And I think maybe the consistent kind of toehold there seems to be the mobile hardware, right? And how most of our fans and customers are engaging with our content, however we send it, email, social, mobile app, however you. And so, quite recently we made a big introduction of a form of content in our app that is more of the vertical short form video content style that we're very excited about, because I think it's opened up an opportunity of both kind of like improved workflows for just kind of speed, efficiency, and even distribution. But it allows us to, like you stated before, like take what we consider to be maybe the strongest storytelling and narrative content that we can produce and get it in front of the people we want to get it in front of on a platform that we manage and operate, and maybe have better control over and can control the safety of it, and all those fun things. So that's been pretty critical and important to us. And thankfully, it has maybe improved efficiency of workflows more than created like, hey, here's this 15th or 16th different version of a video that I need you to cut. So it's helped maybe consolidate the message a bit there. But I think finding the successes of what works really well on social, because it is such this vast playground of creativity and conversation, but then, taking that and getting it in front of, our fans and customers in a more isolated environment has been great to be able to break through in that way.
I mean, it makes sense. We've been watching, Meta, who have far more data than us, looking at, hey, look at what Snapchat doing. Oh, we're going to pull that into our Instagram feature. And now we've got, stories. And now you're seeing more league and club apps, pulling vertical video into their apps because, again, it's easy to consume. It's full screen, all of the advantages. It makes sense. I say steal with pride a lot. It's good to see, league and club apps starting to do what the social networks are doing. So, well, and you're right, from a content production team point of view, you're getting dedicated video people. And yes, it's great, works great on TikTok and Instagram, but it also makes sense for it to live and breathe in your platforms.
Yeah, and it, I think for those Sharks fans who want to be able to find our content more frequently, it gives it a better repository for that, instead of just hoping it falls on you with the algorithms of social, right? Amid the chaos, and it really accentuates the point of big reach, kind of throw it out there and see what happens, versus more personalized, dedicated, here's all the Sharks content you want. And maybe what we're trying and aspiring to get to is really kind of on that same utility and content and use cases of, hey, let's give our Sharks fans a reason to open up this app on a daily occasion, instead of just when they're coming to the SAP Center, the Shark Tank to access the game. Let's give them something new and refreshed. And that's a way to do that.
So what you're talking about inspiration there, where do you look for inspiration in, uplifting digital experiences?
Yeah, good question. I think maybe because my background is rooted in social, it's still very near and dear to my heart. There's just so much creativity and conversation and innovation with the style of content and then the platforms themselves, the way they're constantly competing, that it kind of rises some of these zeitgeist themes to the top. And so far a lot of whether it's the style of content or the narratives, right, I think it's kind of dictated the pace. I don't think 10 years ago we were talking about nearly at the rate this short form content the way we were, where everything had to be 16:9 and 5-minute sit down interviews, and that's the way we get things done. To where now, if we're trying to get even something pretty key to the business, which is hey, we've signed a new player and we'd love to get kind of a personalized message of this player to our members to say how excited he is for the season. We're going vertical, 15 seconds, selfie format, raw, that's what resonates, and that's what we're leaning into. So in terms of inspiration, that's kind of how we are steering it. And again, it helps, right? Because then resources are a little bit better aligned instead of asking for something so against the grain.
I want to talk about, technology. We're always bombarded, and you're, in a real hotbed of where new technology comes out. Is there technology, whether it is new and exciting or boring and terribly efficient, that excites you? Because both are, the new and exciting sometimes gets more publicity, but sometimes the boring and efficient ones are the ones that actually give you the big wins. Is there something that either you're playing with or something that excites you?
Yeah. I think you're right. You're always, whether it's driven by another area of the business, someone sees something that works at some organizations, hey, can we try this? That sometimes that comes to you, or there's something you see that's worth trying. We've done some recent campaigns that have been fun, whether it be, still dabbling in how do you actually play in this AR XR world where you're actually trying to find ways to be more engaged and more immersive. But like our recent attempts have been, instead of just kind of like the full Snapchat filter approach, is like, can it be more storytelling and narrative driven? So we did something last year that paired the release of our new uniform that we call Califin, which had a lot of backstory and a lot of meaning behind it, as you often see with a lot of jersey and uniform releases these days. And we're able to complement this kind of like full avatar experience where you get to try on the jersey, and it helped more than just the wow factor of, hey, here's this fun AR thing to throw yourself on this environment. To us, it helped drive a storytelling component that we wanted to complement that was beyond just what we were sending in email or social. So that's always fun to be able to explore.
And was that input? Was it that storytelling piece? Because again, there is that case of, bright and shiny, let's just roll out, the fans will love it. But the fact that it did help tell the story, help move it along, did that give it more stickiness? And you think that, because it's like the brief, hey, Patrick, make it go viral. And it's like, just because it's bright and shiny, it isn't going to happen. But making that connection to the story and, the other piece of content that were coming out, because it wasn't a one-shot wonder. Do you think that piece of connecting it is what was the important piece?
Yeah, well, what it solved for us is added a level of depth and detail that helped us really have some sustained engagement time, right? So whether or not it actually converted, X percentage of jersey sales, which sure, I would have been loved to drop some wow stat with you right now, but like it was complementary to that, right? It's like, hey, we could actually see when people are entering this experience, they're spending quite a long time with it, much longer than 15 seconds of viewing the video on social. So it's just another touch point to then pair with like an overall campaign. And then even in a more holistic view, the more we can continue to offer our fans who arrive in the app, which is this level of depth, exploration, and detail and things to check out, it's helping the overall goal, again, of why does someone need to have this? Why should they volunteer to open it up amongst the tens or hundreds of other apps on their phone on a daily basis, and how are we kind of creating that trust to drive them there? That's kind of the overarching goal that I think that's serving, whether or not it's actually improving your bottom line sales. Sure, we maybe were able to sell a few more jerseys, but it's not the only ROI and KPI that you're applying to that.
And one of the things, I'm sure, if we dove into the stats of what's driving people into the app and what's performing well, is when you get to feature your athletes and tell the stories and build the heroes of your athletes. What have been some of your keys to success with working with Sharks players?
Yeah, I mean that's where I tend to geek out a little bit too, is because I have my hands on the content side, and maybe even where my background was rooted is in this thought that I would be a part of some kind of storytelling, effort or role in my future is hey, we are helping to broadcast these stories and really kind of serve the brand storytelling effort of the organization, and our athletes are some of the best examples of trying to showcase that. They're one component of it. We try to look at it more than just athletes, but look at our broadcast talent, our employees, our fans. We do a lot of fan storytelling, and all of these components make up what it is to be a part of this like Sharks family that we have. But it helps when you have exciting personalities on the athlete side. Hockey players in general are funny. They're a little bit more of a humble and reserved group. So sometimes you're finding yourself kind of pulling that personality out versus it being volunteered. But I think some of the ways we've had success at propping them up is, again, kind of the asks and what we're trying to do, where it's like, hey, we're not going to make you look silly. We're gonna try to highlight some of these fun off ice stuff that our fans actually kind of gravitate towards more so than the glossy highlights that you can put up on the ice, and really kind of showcase who you are. Again, some of the athletes, it's a little bit more pulling teeth than others, but it's important for them too to feel like they have a digital voice and a digital brand. And we work with them, and we have some tools and technology that allows us to make sure we're not just asking for content from them to post on our channels, but maybe even creating content for them to post on their channels. You talked about inspiration before. I think maybe one space I look to, none other, is if you look across at the North American college market and what some of these college programs are doing for their athletes and how they have to compete for that kind of athlete branding. It's really inspiring stuff that is kind of the race there. So there's been a lot of cool tools and technologies developed to serve that need that work just as well with us, that make it super easy on a player and athlete's day-to-day life, where, if we need some content created by them, we can kind of guide them on it. They open up their app, they press a few buttons, and they're producing the content that we need, versus needing to be in the same space, in the same room with them, and take up a lot of their time in a pretty, valuable schedule that they maintain on a daily basis.
And do you think, as these athletes, and I agree, the college athletes that are going through the NIL process, name, image, likeness, and getting paid and being a bit more active in social will mean they will come into the league and be even, more digital natives than, when you first started your role, working with hockey players. They go, I don't want to be on this social platform. This looks silly. To having these younger sort of molding that, as they come in as rookies and befriending them. And how do you go about building that trust with players to know that, hey, we're here to help you. We'll help build your brand. The fans want to see your personality. We're not expecting you to be a comedian. We just want you to be you, and sort of building that piece out.
Yeah, it's relationships. And it doesn't necessarily matter, who in the organization best have it, because that's what you want, is a relationship from the business to the athlete or player, so that they, have someone they trust and know what's happening. But, we have the benefit of having, again, video producers, our media relations staff, our social team, who is, amongst them and in the locker room on a daily basis. They're on the road traveling. That's so important if you have the resources and availability to do it, because that's when you're going to get some of those pockets of downtime when you can actually have an open and honest conversation with these athletes. We try to make a pretty concerted effort each year in training camp, which is coming up for us, where we do try to find some time to sit down with them and understand their interests. And it's across the whole business, right? It's not just, hey, do you want help growing your following on Instagram, which you hit the nail on the head. Some of these new guys coming in, that is a need for them. But it's like, what nonprofit or charity efforts are you interested in? What's if you're asked to be involved, do you appreciate being on camera more? Would you want to do audio stuff? And it's just understanding kind of where their comfort levels are, and then we can kind of steer it from there. It kind of it helps, right? Because oftentimes you'll have a need for an athlete voice in a scenario to solve something within the business, and you're sometimes trying to identify in the roster who's best for it, right? To sort of have that knowledge, have that relationship that you can call on, you're going to have a little bit of a higher success rate. And thankfully we do have that now with, we've got a young team, right? Some of these kids who will be on the ice for the Sharks and opening day roster are 18 years old. So they know social as much, if not better, than many of the staff. So speaking that common language is going to help, where it was 10 years ago and you're like having to explain what online media is to some of the guys.
And on the other side, you probably remember yourself being an intern and being in a professional hockey environment for the first time, how daunting that is. How do you go about preparing staff to go, oh, we just want to go and, can you go please interview that superstar, and having them understand that they're no longer a fan, they're holding a camera, like how to be professional in that environment, not to be overawed. What's some of the advice that you give staff as they enter that environment?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's got to be some inherent soft skills that can play in there. And then I think, from my own personal experience, it is about exposure and slowly being introduced to that. You probably triggered something in me. I think it was one of my intern days with the 49ers, being in the locker room and just being thrown to the wolves, interviewing a player for the first time and being kind of shaky. But with any, anything in life, more repetition, more experience, you're going to get more comfortable at it and better with it. The nice thing again is that, we do have the benefit of we've got a locker room of some really nice guys, humble guys who are, even if you're asking them to do something that they're a little bit against or ask an awkward question, they usually find a way to improve it and give you a solid answer, which is always helpful when you can even identify it in the spot. And then it's about support, right? So you have media relations staff who's with them on a daily basis. You have video production staff who's maybe in the locker room on a more routine occasion. So if you're asking one of your social producers to go in for the first time and they're fairly new, it's relying on the more experience to really kind of guide them and even showcase and model kind of how that can go. And we've had pretty good success there.
And advice for people that want to get into sport or into a role similar to yours and sort of work in that space. What's your advice for people, trying to break into sports? Because it's a very competitive area and, but there has been more roles, teams have grown, new roles continue to be, invented. Even 3 years ago, vertical video editors weren't a thing and they're now a role. Have you got advice for people who want to get into the world of sport?
I think some of the obvious stuff, which is not so tied to the role, is some of the more important things early on. I spoke to before about just maybe it's so obvious, but like reliability, being able to kind of deliver on what you say, being adaptable and learning. That's important because it's stuff that I still try to work at even with my amount of experience, because you can look through my background and many others. Your roles and responsibilities are going to change. You're going to have opportunities that open up vertically and laterally. And as much as you want to try to stick it in with a career in sports, those opportunities will open up. And, let's say you're dead set on wanting to work in social and for a sports team going forward, like that. You should be open to coming in and stepping into the organization and doing ticket sales or marketing or something else, because those skills translate. And on a daily basis, we're working with those counterparts. So to have that firsthand knowledge of how they operate, their way of thinking, that's only going to aid you. And again, to make another obvious point, like coming in and being impressive in one area, it's a tightly networking world. I kind of often share the story of when I was applying for different jobs. I think I was wrapping up an internship with the 49ers and applied for one with the Sharks. At the same time, I was asking my boss at the 49ers if she knew anybody at the Sharks to kind of maybe put a good word in for me. The Sharks were calling counterparts at the 49ers and asking, hey, who is this kid? What does he represent? So, that word of mouth translation of someone being kind of a good fit is going to go far. So, maybe to summarize that is not to be so determined or even deflated if things don't go exactly your way early on thinking this is the one path to do it. There's a lot of different ways to kind of get to where you want to go.
Yeah, most definitely. I had many conversations with people that have said they've set up tents outside of stadiums. They've in some cases put on mascot uniforms to hand out flyers, like and now they're at C-level executives. But the opportunities will open up if you show that initiative and deliver. I mean, that's the key thing. People want people who can actually do the job.
Never did the tent route, but it reminded me, one of the best pieces of advice I got when I was starting to, especially again if you're young and new in your role, is, and again assuming it is a role where you are reporting to an office on a regular occasion, like make sure you get to know the people who can help you out beyond like your department. So like the reception and greeter areas, the person working in the mailroom, like those types of people, knowing their names, knowing kind of the processes and how to help them may ultimately save you and make you shine going forward. So maybe not this so obvious people to network with, but they're there first and they're there last. So they know everybody and they know how the heartbeat of the organization works.
Most definitely. I wanted to touch on your one of the sessions you did at Seed in Las Vegas with the very heavy title of delivering on the personalization promise. I really did enjoy it with a bunch of different colleagues. What does that what does that piece mean for you, delivering on that personalization promise? Because it is sort of the next, the next trend. We went through the big data phase where everyone was looking for big data or figuring out what big data was. But now we're, what does that personalization, how can we better personalize what we're doing? What does it mean for you at the Sharks?
Yeah, that's why I'm so high on our mobile app and people's effort in the mobile app space to have something owned that you can build and construct for your business is because it's the space where you're most readily available to deliver on that promise. It makes a ton of sense from a business, right? You're going to get better ROI, greater efficiency if you can deliver the right content in front of the right audience at the right time with less wasted effort, better than what you cannot really achieve on other platforms. It's being data driven with everything you do. And there's an immense amount of data, and sometimes that's hard to connect the dots on all, but with deeper analysis, you're going to be able to learn more about the behavior. And the customer experience is paramount as we try to achieve, and that's a promise that we try to make in front of our fans and customers. It's really a brand promise as much as anything, is that saying you matter to us, and how we interact with you on a daily basis should convey that, right? So if we know who you are, we know why you're interacting with us, we can better solve your needs, we can even kind of volunteer the right information that you may be seeking in advance. That's delivering on that brand promise for us. So that's why we hold it, at a pretty high level, and it's by no means achieved, right? You kind of pointed out this is maybe a lot is going to be focused on this going forward. I fully agree. But that's why we're trying to be as responsible as we can with how we, vet technology that we're bringing in, making sure that it stacks the right way, making sure that we're up to the right standard with privacy, accessibility concerns, all of the legal side of it, but then ultimately deliver just an exceptional experience. That's the goal.
And again, it's sort of following the trends of main consumption. Your Netflix is your Netflix. Every social platform now has a for you, algorithm. So everyone is expecting their version. So kudos to you. I did want to touch on your tech stack. What are some of the tools that are in your tech stack that you're either using regularly, in your role, or even just for personal productivity that you find pretty vital?
Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways you can go about it, and sometimes that adds zeros at the end of the final budget there. But our strategy has been to work with on the app side, an app developer and FanReach that is very much a platform developer. So they're really great, especially with working with sports clients, at building kind of the framework and the skeleton of an app that can really serve the fundamentals of the business. Again, thinking about that content and utility aspect that all the sports teams have. And then what they do is they allow us to kind of plug in more of these niche products across the obviousness of, we're a Ticketmaster business that manages all of our ticketing products. So that's an SDK in the app. And then other, various technologies that allow us to deploy, our digital wallet, which is operated by Venuetize, which is really critical for us because that's where all of our membership benefits are contained. And that's where we're making a promise to our members. Hey, what you signed up for in terms of your benefits, that can all be easily accessed in this mobile experience. So to get it right and to get it reliable is critical. We work with a partner in Rover who really, in terms of personalization, propels us in our ability to do just that, allow us to build these highly custom experiences that frankly, our team has had a ton of fun with this offseason. I don't know, for those who haven't followed the Sharks as closely, we had a less than ideal performance on the ice the year before where we finished dead last, but we paid for it and earned it by grabbing the number 1 overall draft pick and using it on Macklin Celebrini, who is going to come in as our first overall draft pick to join the organization. So what was a pretty disappointing end of the year has turned into a lot of excitement and engagement in an offseason when sports teams who finish last don't traditionally get that. So we've had to pull a lot of levers and kind of empty the barrel, so to speak, and everything that we can produce to capitalize on this excitement, engage our fans and customers during an off season where they're maybe not as typically engaged. So to create these really robust experiences around the NHL draft and development camp and the lottery and free agency, That's how we get all these technologies to work together. Maybe in a more simplified way to describe it is, we want you to open up the app and it be contextual to the time and place, right? Putting the right information in front of you at the right time, and that's enabled us to do that.
Absolutely terrific, Pat. You're really happy, and thankfully you joined me. I want to get to the Sports Geek closing five. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
There have been a lot, thankfully. I've been a part of sports my whole life. The one that comes to mind first is maybe this combination of pure trauma and just my first interaction. We talked about locker rooms, right? So this was my first real locker room experience. I was a kid, maybe 5 or 6 years old. There was something to do with someone that my mom had worked at, used to be a former AAA player for the Texas Rangers. And somehow my dad and I got access to the Texas Rangers locker room. And this was in the early 90s. So their heyday era of like just home runs after home runs and a lot of big names there. And so I had my little, baseball, and I was meant to go around the locker room and get my autographs. And I got everybody: Jose Canseco, Juan Gonzalez, Pedro Rodriguez, all these big names. And maybe the biggest one, and the one I actually knew most at that age, was Nolan Ryan. And he was the last one to get. And, I looked down to where his locker was, and he was standing there ready and available. Should I want to go up and ask him? But he was just head to toe naked. So I was immediately struck in fear and balked at the opportunity and missed my chance because I was a little 5 or 6 year old who didn't want to interact that way. And so I've got this awesome baseball signed by the great Texas Rangers team of the early 90s, and it's missing Nolan Ryan. So that was my first real crossover of being a fan and being in the locker room, and this is weird. And lo and behold, I came to have a career in this space where I'm in more locker rooms. I'll give you a bonus one too, because Australia is near and dear to my heart. My first footy game was at the Subiaco Oval, seeing the West Coast Eagles take on the Fremantle Dockers, and that's when I was introduced to AFL rules football and fell in love with it there.
Terrific. I'm sure that baseball has obviously that mental image that now all the podcast listeners also have.
Scarred.
So
it's scarred.
And you would have been to a lot of sports events in your time. Do you have a favorite food memory or a go-to food at a sports event?
Maybe not the most exciting answer here. I'm a big fan of popcorn, so anytime I go anywhere, I'm probably going to try popcorn. I don't go for the fancy stuff. Some of these venues try the honey drizzled and chocolate covered with jalapenos and all these combinations. I just like the pure movie style. Somewhat controversial. Not a big fan of churros. I know that's a lot of people's favorites. If you do make your way to the SAP Center for a Sharks game or a concert or whatever, I recommend Hula Truck. It's kind of this Pacific Island food flavor, but they wrap it up in a burrito most of the time. It's quite good. That's my escape, even though I'm maybe not enjoying as many games as a fan. If I can run up and grab one and take it back down to the desk while I'm working, that's my go-to.
Awesome. What's the first app you open in the morning?
I'd probably like it to be Peloton or something worthwhile with my health, but it's honestly Twitter, X. It's my go-to quick kind of scroll, see some quick news, and can in a short span of 5 or 10 minutes pretty much get caught up on a few things. Kind of make an active effort to not let it be Outlook, but given in the space we work in, sometimes that Teams message is top on the priority notification list.
I'll ask you, where do you think X is right now?
Yeah, it's spicy debate, right? I still quite enjoy it. I mean, if you ask me to show you my screen time, it's up there at the top, if not number one, in terms of amount of time I'm spending it on. Maybe it's just with my history with it. It's been a platform that I've probably most kind of also operated from a professional side. I still think it is a fantastic kind of platform that is unique from what the others can offer in terms of offering news, kind of breaking trend conversation on things that are kind of very topical. And I find it somewhat useful to jump around between professional topics I want to see, kind of movies and culture and fun stuff I want to see. So it kind of serves that, but it's a little dicier to jump into the comments these days.
Yeah, a little bit. It is one, like, I still find it, I'm still mainly on my following. So people who I'm following and I'm choosing, the For You is a little bit more of an adventure, and it's something that you don't. It's a bit of a choose your own adventure. It's not, you're not actually choosing the adventure. Is probably the best way to describe it. Is there someone that you follow? It might be on X, or it might be on other platforms, or it might be an author or something that the podcast listeners should check out?
Yeah, I don't know if you've had her as a guest. You may have. The one that comes front of mind straight away is Jess Smith, War Jess Eagle on Twitter. Definitely a thought leader that, what she's commenting on and speaking on matches a lot of, across social and storytelling and content on a daily basis. And she's a great writer with clarity and broad perspective. So definitely plugging her blog and social for anybody who's looking for that type of inspiration. I'm oftentimes trying to look outside of sports too. Kind of a random one that's popping up right now to mind is like something like the National Park Service. I mean, they kind of sit themselves kind of all alone in this space where it's not maybe overrun with a lot of similar accounts, and they do just such a great job of having a consistent voice and personality, and again have this niche of like content that I'm not normally seeing. So when I'm scrolling through the Twitter abyss, right, and it stops my scroll, it's kind of fun to see. Maybe just a couple more. We spoke about athletes, and obviously their voice, whether guided by themselves or complementary organization, is always strong. A few that I've enjoyed where they are now is someone like Matt Leinart, who obviously was a big name when he was quarterback at USC, winning the Heisman and whatnot. I don't remember ever following him during those days, but his content and his personal life now is just kind of a fun kind of insight to athlete life right now, and he does a great job of showing that along with his wife and his kids at home. That's fun, and I say that as a Notre Dame fan and not a USC fan, so it's funny how I've kind of gravitated back toward that. So last one, Kurt Benkert. He's a quarterback who kind of
former QB quarterback for the Packers.
Yeah. We've got a brief moment in the NFL, but he's fascinating to me because he's hugely immersed in video games and game culture right now, and he does this awesome thing of how he takes kind of like his mind as a former athlete, and then he's playing games and showing that insight to you. And I just find that so fascinating to see how that translates. So just under that lens of inspiration for where athletes can take their voice outside of sport or kind of just show off this personality that's not so cliche, those are some ones that come to mind.
Yeah, so I spoke with Kurt, not on the podcast, but sort of the work we do with the NFL, like at the start of last year when he had just come out of effectively his career and decided, well, I'm not going to continue being a backup. Like he was a backup to Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love in Green Bay. And then to him to lean into, I can play Madden, and I'm playing Madden as a QB, and I know what the playbook looks like. I'll teach people how to play Madden. But he's also teaching people how to, learn more of the X's and O's of football in the same way that I think, JJ Redick did in podcasting and having a educated experience for the fan, and not just the highlights and the gloss. And so being able to go a little bit deeper, but also be in that educational mode. Yeah, he's found a really good space, and build out YouTube and TikTok and that kind of stuff. And I've been both following his journey and really interested to see how it goes.
Yeah, it just seems to stand out as a unique approach from kind of the way you're used to seeing that style of content. So agree wholeheartedly on all those fronts.
Lastly, I always ask people what social media platform is your MVP, and you can answer this both personally and then from a Sharks point of view. I'm a real stickler for this. I really don't like people giving out gold, silver, bronze. This isn't the Olympics. We just want one. But what about for yourself?
Okay, all right. Under those stickler rules. So I am going to continue to roll with X and Twitter, despite maybe, where it sits and some uncertainty over where it goes. I just can, and this is maybe a little bit more personal for my own personal inspiration and kind of my following, continues to give me that avenue for news and trends and even some, fun creativity on creative writing and creative responses to stuff. I find that entertaining. Performance-wise, I think Instagram slight edge over TikTok, just because, right, Instagram Reels and TikTok, you're kind of seeing the same content anyways. It allows us to do so much in terms of taking our storytelling needs and presenting it through, 2 or 3 different formats and getting it done through posts and reels and stories. And then we're just repurposing some of the good content. So I think that's where we're finding some success. I'll stick with my gold medalist there without giving you silver and bronze.
No problems. Patrick, I really do appreciate you taking the time. If people have listened to this episode and want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah. So contacting me on social, on Twitter at Johnny Hoop, JOHNNIEHOOP is an option. LinkedIn is also good too. If you'd prefer to kind of go that professional route, looking me up on Patrick Hooper, I ain't hard to find, as Dion says. So, reach out through those ways, or Sean, if you need to connect us, that works too.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate catching up. They're always good to catch up in person or online, and look forward to catching up sometime soon.
Likewise. Appreciate the conversation, Sean.
Looking to help your digital or sponsorship team? Book in for a Pick My Brain session with Sean Callanan to help your team level up. Book now at sportsgeekhq.com/pickmybrain.
Thanks again to Patrick Hooper. Please connect with him on LinkedIn. I will tag him in this post on my LinkedIn. And please follow him on X, Johnny Hoop, Johnny with IE Hoop. And I have got a bone to pick, not with Patrick and not with Johnny Hoop, but with Twitter and Elon Musk. I have found recently, and I don't know what is happening or if it's a bug, that there are people that I thought I was following that I'm no longer following. So Patrick, apologies. I recently followed you. I think I recently followed you back because I thought I was following. So again, I don't know if it's a glitch in the X matrix that's caused it. But if you're listening to the podcast and I don't follow you, please send me a tweet at Sean Callanan. I'm happy to give you a follow back. Like I said, I don't know why some of the people I know and thought I was following, I'm not following. I can't remember unfollowing them. That's my disclaimer, but please send me a tweet. You can follow, like I said, Patrick, Johnny Hoop, and you can find all links from this episode at sportsgeekhq.com/389. I want to just close this episode on really one of the things that we did talk about, which is personalized marketing. Like, it's been a holy grail over the last 15 years. And you really do need your team to be curious, to dive into the data and to have passion. And like I said to Patrick, that's what the Sharks have in spades with people like Patrick and Netta and Stacey. They dive into the data and into the experience for the fans. And the returns come in the term of deeper fandom, increased engagement, and it does remind me of a Gary Vaynerchuk quote: "Heart's mind, wallet." Like, make people love you, make people think about you, and the money will come. It works exactly the same in sports, but you do need to have a team that will be data driven, that does want to dive into data, that does want to find those solutions, but always has the fan in the center. And so I'll finish that off with, how can I help you? Is it something in the digital space? Would it be a review or an audit? Could we run a workshop for you around our digital to dollars process to help you understand how you can better commercialize your digital platforms? Is it just staff mentoring and training, maybe with one-on-one, or working with some of your key digital staff and helping them either break through with some content thing, or is it C-level training? Is it helping your C-level or your board better understand what digital and data and can deliver for your team? One thing I have been doing recently, which is, again, love getting into the geek and back to my discussion about digital plumbing, is doing a tools review. What are the tools you're using? Are you using them efficiently? Are there gaps? Are there problems that need to be solved that potentially a tool might be able to assist? And then the last one is one around AI. How are you and your team leveraging AI? How could you? What could you do? What should you be doing? We're playing with a lot of different tools to figure out how it can help in the content creation space and curation and improved workflows. So again, it sort of fits in the both of that tools review and how you can leverage AI. If there are things you're interested in or things I can help, please reach out, Sean at Sports Geek HQ. Like I say, I'd love to work with podcast listeners. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Do you get Sports Geek news? Sean Callanan analyzes the latest sports business articles for you weekly. Sign up at sportsgeekhq.com. Want to help drive more revenue from your digital efforts? Book a time for a call. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call.